Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my BBTV Speech Personal Branding Webinar Edition 5. Today, we're going to welcome our host, Nathaniel Schooler, our closing engine specialist, Jason Kanigan, and we have the luck to have Michelle Raymond from the UK, specialist of personal branding with human resources. And if we're lucky, we will have the former Huffington Post community manager, Tim McDonald. So let's cross the finger. I'm going to leave my place to our friend Jason Kanigan and Nathaniel Schooler, co-host of the show for today. Thank you for attending. Talk to you soon and see you later. Jason, where are you, Jason? Jason Kanigan. Whoop.
Well, I don't see anybody but me. That's very interesting.
Hi there. So it looks like we've had a few tech problems today, and hopefully we'll be able to function normally with some luck. So let's see. We've got Jason.
Am I here? I feel like the horse in the stall to start the race, and the race started, but the gate didn't open.
I kind of panic. I panic. When you're not there, I'm just like, oh my God. Like I used to run, I used to run a lot of these myself. Yeah. But it's so great to have a team of people to work with, man. How much fun is it?
It's lots of fun. It's so much fun. I'm here on Friday mornings. But seriously, we get to talk about stuff with you, Nathaniel. For anybody who doesn't know, Nathaniel Schooler is IBM futurist personal branding expert, and somebody you should talk to if you're kind of confused about what to say when it comes to, so what do you do? And you'd like to reach clients quickly. So Nathaniel, let's kick it off. Today we wanted to talk about personal branding and authority in the marketplace, something I have used in my corporate career to great advantage, to beat the hell out of people when it comes to getting a job, basically, or creating a customized role that was just for me. So what have you got for us?
Well, Stefan has got a few slides for me. Hopefully he may. Here we go. So I had a problem. I was a bit late, unfortunately, dropping my slides through to him to the album, and so hence why we've got a bit of a screen share going on. But it's, what does your personal brand say about you? And actually, authority and credibility are two things that are linked intrinsically together, and actually, building the authority and the credibility is key. So would you mind dropping on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So especially, right, this is a really important slide, okay? And you know why it's important, right? Because so many jobs are not even created yet. Robot managers were hired by Hitachi to manage human workforce, the human workforce, in 2015, right? I believe in August. If anyone wants to check, feel free, have a look, right? And they actually created an 8% increase in productivity within 24 hours, which I know you used to work in industry, big industry as well as I did. And it's quite interesting, actually, to see how the machines have come along. We had the Industrial Revolution, we had the machine age, and now I read a book called the Second Machine Age, and that's where we are now. We're in the second machine age. So hence why building the personal brand for people, for ambitious people, because hey, if you're not ambitious, don't even bother. Like, you may as well not bother. Build your personal brand. It's not really worth it. I mean, yeah, you could to do it, to defend your job, but then why would you want to get better at something if you're not ambitious? So anyway, I'm sidetracked there. So, with this day and age and the workers, the artificial intelligence powered computers are actually changing the face of industry, changing jobs. So what this means is that actually building your personal brand has become even more important for people. You agree?
Well, I know how important it is. Absolutely.
Me too, man. Me too. So, do you mind dropping onto the next slide, please, Stefan? Thank you. So, what's very interesting for big business is well, any business, in fact, is 561% more reach is created from employees sharing brand messaging via their own personal accounts. Okay, that is huge. That's absolutely huge. And those messages are shared 24 times more frequently because they're from personal accounts. And you get 8 times more engagement from employees versus a brand account, which it says it all, really. I mean, there are a lot of brand consultants out there, but they actually haven't grasped the fact that, you know, businesses need to be working on the personal branding. Everyone's talking social selling, social selling this, marketing that, but actually social selling is marketing and it is branding, and the brand wording always comes, and it should always come before the actual logo, or even before the headshot from people, you know.
So human to human communication over whatever medium seems to be more effective than faceless corporate brand to human. Yeah,
very much so. They got sick. A lot of people just got sick of corporate messaging. A lot of people shared the corporate messages from the huge companies because they got all excited about social media. And actually the problem was there was no coherent strategy for the brand of the individual and actually blending that brand with the corporation strategy or not in that respect. So, you know, a lot of companies said, well, our responsibility is that we're going to have to make sure that you share your own opinions. So everybody put in their social media, this social media account is for my own opinions and does not reflect the opinions of the company. And it was just so ridiculous. It was just so ridiculous that some lawyer obviously came up with the need to do this, you know, and actually, if you are conscientious, you're going to be very careful what you're going to share on social media anyway. Right. You know, could you please drop on to the next slide? Disclaimers are everywhere. He's right. So what I found, so this is the nuts and the bolts, right, of credibility and authority. Okay, I'm not going to cover everything because it is a huge subject. All right, but actually, here is me, and that is my friend. And one of my colleagues, Jamie Robert Howes. And between us, we have worked with all of these companies that are actually on the banner on the bottom of this picture. Okay, so we've actually worked out that we can leverage each other's credibility and each other's authority in order to build our own personal brands and whatever joint ventures that we decide that we want to do. And that is a very simple way to look at it. Obviously, there are other parts to building authority and credibility. You know, you can think about how many years you've been in a business, how many years you've been in an industry, how many departments have you worked in, you know, and yeah, I mean, Stefan is saying Jamie Robert Howes is an awarded UK photographer. He is, but actually he's also a photographic tutor as well. And he teaches people all the way from beginner, as I am still pretty much, all the way up to university and beyond. And, you know, he's a very experienced individual within his field. And so that's a way of exploiting credibility and authority to build your personal brand. Is very, very important. I also encourage people to talk about some of their amazing things that they've done in their careers. I mean, I was working with a lady the other day who's absolutely brilliant in the architectural industry, in the interior architects, and she's absolutely incredible, you know. And she's been in the industry for nearly 30 years. She's saved businesses over the next 20 years. Her business her business ideas and her design experience will save businesses, I would estimate, billions of dollars, right? So if you've got these big wow factor statements, you can use them to your advantage. And I'm sure Michelle, who's going to come on as a guest shortly, will have a lot of value to add, because she's actually been in the HR industry for many years, I think. So she will have a lot more to add. Have you got anything else you want to add, Jason, to that?
Just, you don't need, you don't need to be some kind of proclaimed superstar to be able to use this stuff and take advantage of it. My first experience with personal branding, where I really put it to work, was when I was 24 years old. I had hair. And back then, I had been trained to be a factory manager, but nobody wanted to let me do it because I was a kid still, right, up to that age. And so I had done some jobs, and I ended up working for a medium-sized manufacturing company in a sales role, and I wanted to move up, and the sales manager told me I had to pay my dues. And you're going to hear this a lot out there in the world if you're a young person. And yes, you have to know something, and I did, but you don't have to pay your dues. I mean, I leapfrogged 10 years over that guy's head. I immediately quit working for him, and I spent the next 4 months targeting that first factory manager job, and I got it. And I got it by creating what's called a brief, and this is out of Think and Grow Rich. I'm the only person I know who has actually done this with what's written there. It's a booklet about yourself with a cover letter for what you want and some branding documentation, letters of support, the photo and all that. And this is back in 1999, 2000. It was right in that winter spring period. And I would send these out specifically just to targeted factory manager jobs, and I got it. So I quit in November. By April, I was working at that plant manager job. I was 25 years old, and no one can take that experience away from me. And that is the power of personal branding. I stood out. Standing out is the number one thing. And I was very clear about what I wanted, and I showed how I matched up with the opportunity that I wanted, and I got it. And anyone can do that. I mean, if I could do that, this was before the internet really took off. I've done this 4 times since then, creating custom roles that were just for me without any competition. And I'm not interested in being an employee anymore, but I can teach people how to do it. And that's how you can use personal branding, even if you don't have the marquee things to put across your screen there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are always people you can compare yourself to throughout life. Mm-hmm. There are always people who are lesser and greater than us, you know. And I mean, I that's why I work with some amazing people, including you guys and Jamie and Stefan. But I also work with the gentleman who taught me how to do branding. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I leverage his credibility and his authority because he used to write speeches for the president of Malaysia. He's worked on some of the biggest brands in the world, Krug Champagne for one, Remy Martin Cognac, Filofax. He actually was the Filofax marketing director before. So they approached him and said, we need you to help us. And he actually became the marketing director. And they went from a loss-making business to a profit, and then they sold. And he was part of that transition within a 2-year period. So it is possible to move forwards very, very quickly with personal branding and business branding, and to actually change a business and turn it around very, very quickly. So should we bring our first guest on board? Because we've got 2 amazing guests. I've got a funny feeling we might actually overrun a little bit today, Jason. But we've got some great value to add. So I think we'll bring in Michelle, hopefully, shortly, and she will introduce herself.
Well, Michelle, here we are. I don't know where Nathaniel went. Hopefully, Stefan can bring him back. So tell us, I guess, a bit about, I know you and Nathaniel should know each other a little bit. Nathaniel,
I'm sorry.
It's one of those days, I guess, tech-wise. We're in row.
I like it. It's a bit like having a conversation with someone and someone actually picking you up, throwing you out the door, right? And then they pick you up and throw you back in front of the person. It's priceless. So Michelle and I have connected on social media, but I would say probably for about 6 months, maybe less. And I kind of resonated with some of the great content that you've been putting out there. And hence why I invited you to come and have a chat with us, really.
Thank you.
So I guess, what would you like to share about authority and personal branding? Why don't we start with that?
I was having a similar debate with somebody recently. And I think the one thing about credibility and authority is about being true to who you are and being true to your audience or to your service users. So I had an example. So I do HR. I do HR for small, medium businesses. Right. Usually they have a turnover of £1 million and they usually have staff. But I also do career coaching. And when I went to pitch my services to a company, they said, oh, no, actually, we don't want you. We want a solicitor. We want someone who knows a lot about employment law, who knows all of the legislation and compliance. So I said, I'm not an employment law. Right, you know, what you said was absolutely correct. But the difference between me and a lawyer, you'll pay £300 to £400 an hour for a service that I can provide and help you implement it. And I said, you don't need to be a lawyer to understand legislation and compliance. But you need to be somebody who understands it, but also knows how to embed it within the culture of an organization. And so I was being very authentic and true and saying, I don't know. I don't know everything about law, and I'm not an employment lawyer. So you take me or leave me. Right. It will make no difference. So for me, credibility and authority is actually being true to yourself. I didn't try to lie or swindle him, but also being confident in what you can do and your own abilities. And I think it's very true that you get that across. Although you don't need to be a jack of all trades, right?
No, it's very important not to be a jack of all trades. If you specialize a little bit, you get known. I mean, all of us can do a whole bunch of things, right? I don't do factory management anymore. I don't even do sales training anymore, right? We just do one thing. We run high-ticket sales teams. That's it. So great story. And also I find that attorneys tend to tell you what you can't do and slow things down and stop creativity in that. So I think you would be a much better fit for that company.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun, though. I think that's half of the joy of it, is actually taking the time to really decide on who you want to be, you know, because you're in control of yourself. I mean, if you start work with a new company, you can leverage their credibility, you know, like I was saying a bit earlier, and you can do that with individuals as well. So if you work with certain people who've been in the industry forever and everybody knows them, then you're actually tapping into those relationships, aren't you? And that's just so great. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, there's I can't remember the quote properly, but in the Bible it says something like a prophet is never recognized in his own town. And that's the same thing, just to reflect what you're saying, that you could be in an industry for so long and people don't actually really see your true value because it's the law of familiarity, and it takes somebody outside the industry to come and show your true value and worth.
Right. My co-founder says that exact phrase a lot.
Yeah. And you can never call yourself an expert. Never, or a guru. Like you know, you can't. If someone else calls you that, then that's fine, yeah, and you can accept that fact. But I think the moment you step across the line is where you generally get in trouble, really.
Yeah.
So Michelle, in your career coaching experience, do you have a story of where you've worked with somebody to develop their personal branding and authority?
Yeah, there's two. There's two people I'm working with at the moment.
Great.
And one of them, she used to work as she used to do project management, but she had a background in health and nutrition and wellness, and she wanted to establish herself. So she was very much about creating this logo, because everyone thinks a brand is a logo. So she was very much about doing that. And I said to her, what's really important is you. Right now, you're your brand, and people are going to relate to you. Before they see all the pretty things, they want to know what you can do for them. So we went through a series of just getting her to really hone into what she was very good at and really be able to communicate that effectively with the people, her target market. And then after this, we moved from that phase to the phase of now being able to visualize this and communicate this out to the wider world. So she started doing a bit more Facebook Live and a bit more videos, and she hated it at first. And I said, the importance of this is allowing people to see who you really are. So you're not hiding behind your new flashy website. You're not hiding behind your business cards. People want to see you, flaws and all. You're a nutrition coach, right? There's going to be aspects of you that people want to see. They want to relate to your human side. And and about positioning as well. And because she did a series of these videos, people got to know her. People got to know her family, because I said, bring your family into it. She's very good at creating food, healthy food, which costs less and can be done quickly. So I said, you're a family woman. Show yourself with your family in the kitchen cooking it. Get your son to do parts of it, because there's hundreds of other people who have children, and now you're positioning yourself as a thought leader, as somebody who is seen as an expert on nutrition. And that's the stages we went to. And now she's doing workshops for corporates in central London. So she's now flying, which is really good. And it started, I guess, with her understanding her own personal brand and building the business brand from that.
Authenticity is so important, isn't it,
Nathaniel? Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. That's it. You can't be fake. You can put out whatever persona you want, but if people meet you in real life, or they speak to you on the telephone, and you're completely different as you are online, then they don't generally buy from you. They just sort of they go and buy from someone else who is in essence more authentic and who's built a better relationship with them, But in the next few years, we're in quite a crazy place when you look at the technology that we're actually using now. And in the big businesses, they're actually aligning salespeople automatically to clients and to prospects based upon football team that they support, based upon music that they like, based upon locations where they've lived, based upon friends they have, etc., etc. So we're at a point now where you can't run away from who you are, and actually you're going to damage your business and anyone else's business who you're involved with if you perhaps you say you support Everton and you actually support Arsenal, and then you get invited to a game and you bump into your mates who are over in the other stand, and they might shout at you across the pitch or something, just as a metaphor, right? But it's a funny place where we're at with the technology, and it has to be people driven. It has to be people driven,
Yeah. Michelle, you mentioned you had 2 stories. Would love to hear the other one.
Oh, yeah. So the other one is slightly different. She's a newer client of mine. She actually left her job to start her business, and actually it taps into part of what Nathaniel was saying about authenticity. I'm such a true believer of practice what you preach. And I'm not saying that if you've never experienced it, you can't teach it to others. I'm not saying that. But I do believe if you're going to profess something and telling everybody else to do it, you need to be doing it yourself. So with a client of mine, she'd left her job and she wanted to start her own business. And she was struggling because she was sold the dream. that you can run your own business, you can be this great entrepreneur, this freedom lifestyle, this laptop lifestyle, and that comes after a period of time. Yeah. But before all of that comes the hard work, comes the grind. Yeah. Before that comes the late nights, the early mornings, the bits that nobody really wants to sell because it doesn't sound pretty. And so when she came to me, I said, well, we need to strip you all back. You've got links in multi-level marketing, MLM. You've got links here, you've got links there. But who are you? Who are you? Yeah. And so we're at this stage where we're stripping her back. And I said, because right now, we need to strip you right back. And if it means finding another part-time job in the meantime while we're building you up, let's do it. Because I don't want people, and this is why I've put on this workshop in February, because I want people to test drive their business idea before they sack their bosses. Yeah. I'm not one of the coaches to say, sack your boss. You can live this lifestyle, sell all your online products, because there's a whole mammoth of stuff that goes on in the background. And so I'm working with her right now, and it's a beautiful journey. I'm seeing her transition. I'm seeing how she's positioning herself. She's an author now. And so I'm really excited to see where that's leading. But yeah, I'm definitely into, I tell people the truth, I just say,
well, there are a lot of people that don't. Yeah.
They don't.
Look, let's reconvene. Let's reconvene next week or the week after, and you come back, because at the moment we've got Tim waiting in the waiting room, and so he's going to jump in. He's the ex Huffington Post community manager, and he's got such great online persona that is totally who he is, the same as you. The authenticity just rocks. So check him out, and please do come back. You've been a lovely guest. I'm sorry to kind of kick you out.
Don't kick me out. That's fine. It's all right. No feelings hurt around
here. Thank you so much, and we'd love to have you back. You've been lovely, really great. Your stories have been great.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully Stefan's here. Here he is. Yeah. So we've got Tim McDonald here, who I've already connected with, and he's a fantastic chap from across the pond. How you doing, Tim?
Good to know. Oh, you might be muted.
Don't worry, he'll fix it.
It could be on your mic, because there isn't.
Is this better?
There we go.
Perfect. Got you.
All right.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I don't know why my microphone doesn't work. I got it set up for Zoom, and it works with Zoom, but I get on another service and I got to do the old fashioned and just use the speakers and the mic internal to the computer. So delayed hello.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
No, it's my pleasure. And I just want to say, I was like, if I could reach out and give Michelle a hug when she was on, because I was listening. It was like when she was talking about the difficult part of starting a business and like getting a part-time job and everything, and not sugarcoating anything. I'm like, oh, I just want to hug you.
Right.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people that will encourage others to spend whatever little money they have and just jump straight into things without actually helping them to make money, right?
You think about this, anybody listening, think about the one time you've seen an email marketing that was going to tell you how to get rich, but they didn't tell you that you were getting rich. They told you how difficult and frustrating it was going to be. They don't do that because it doesn't sell anything. But it's the reality of the world that we live in.
Right.
Yeah. The reality is it is hard work. And anyone that says that you can just sit on your backside and become an entrepreneur overnight so that you've got a business that makes money while you sleep is just full of it. You know, they have no idea what the real world is like, I'm afraid.
Well, I think, for me, it's one of the things that we don't even hear about too much, too. It's, for me, it was never I quit working for companies because I wanted that lifestyle of not having to put myself through the grind and not have to be in that hustle mode all the time. And part of that was, understanding that if I wanted this, I needed to change my mindset as far as how, things that we're used to, like steady income and regular paychecks and all this, and trusting myself to understand that I didn't need all that to still continue to live. And that emotional toll that it takes on you, because I can say this with great ease now, 2 years after I started this journey, right? But at the beginning of that journey, I mean, I would wake up in like cold sweats and I wouldn't be able to sleep because I was too worried about how I was going to pay my rent this month and, and how I was going to make my car payment. And now I'm just like, you know what? I mean, I just got back from a really nice vacation with my wife celebrating our anniversary. We spent way too much money than we should have. And they come back and our business, at this time of year is slower. And I'm like, I started to get those old tendencies of freaking out emotionally inside. And all of a sudden I look in my bank account today and I'm like, oh, I can breathe again. Why wasn't I trusting myself 4 days ago?
Yeah, I've described getting into business as being willing to get punched in the face for 2 years. So it's funny that you said that figure. Another phrase that I run into a lot is the map is not the territory. A guru or a coach or something can give you the map, but you still have to go down there and walk through the swamp and discover what you're going to discover. And they can't do it for you. They just can't. You have to figure it out yourself.
Well, I think we all have our own path, right? And nobody else walks the same path that we walk. It might be similar in terrain. It might be similar in the obstacles that we overcome. But until we actually take those steps ourselves, nobody can tell us exactly how we have to approach each one of those situations. So I like to say that it's a solo journey. I can hold your hand, but I can't take the steps for you.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not alone. Even though it's a solo journey, you're not alone. I can hold your hand, but I cannot make the footsteps for you. You need to make those.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, I think you have done a fantastic job of building your credibility and authority because you've leveraged your past within the Huffington Post, right? And you've done an amazing job.
Sounds like we're losing Nathaniel's internet.
You've just been part of, and I was just like, wow, this guy. I'd love for him to actually perhaps do some live videos, maybe do some training courses and some other things with us because we're building all sorts of different things. Normally, well, in the next few weeks, I'm going to have Jamie Robert Howes on the show as well because he's a
It's us again.
That's so funny.
All of us will be here. Here we are.
I feel like I've been thrown out by security. So funny. You got to laugh, right? So,
well, I was just laughing because I was wondering if it was my computer, and then when Jason said it, I'm like, no, I hear Jason perfectly, so it's not.
He keeps doing it to me. So I'd love to do some things with you because I think that the major part of social media and actually business and marketing is the community building because even now it's becoming so much more important and you've done an amazing job in your career. Would you like to just tell us what you did over at the HuffPost?
Yeah, well, I think even a more interesting story, Nat, is going to be to tell you how I got the job at Huffington Post, right?
Cool.
Because everybody sees that name, and that's what I want people to not focus on, right? I don't want people to focus on where I came from. I want them to know how I got there, because that's like the story that means something. Everybody can look at the title of a book and say, oh, I know what this book is all about. But until you dive into it and understand it, you truly don't know what that book means to you. And so I'll try and be kind of short because I can get long-winded sometimes.
Before you do, I did notice the charity story on your LinkedIn, and that really stood out to me more than the HuffPost, just so that you know, right? So don't think that, it was just that was what I remembered because I don't remember the name of the charity or exactly what happened there. So
that's No Kid Hungry, which is it's a US based nonprofit, but their main campaign is No Kid Hungry, and they focus on ending childhood hunger here in America. And so I've been very involved with them. And I can tell many stories around communities around that. But I think that the interesting thing to me was, when I first got involved in social media, it was when I was in real estate. And I was living in Chicago, and I worked for a developer, and it was right at the peak of the real estate market where it was just about to crash. I have perfect timing on everything, right? So I'm working for him, and we had these college-age kids that would come in and do the demo work on the buildings that we were rehabbing. And on their lunch breaks, I would talk with them, I would get friendly with them, and they'd be on their phones, and they'd show me these jokes and pictures from Facebook. And I noticed the only thing I knew about Facebook, because I wasn't allowed on it at the time, was that you had to be friends with people in order to communicate with them. And I saw that this came from somebody in Australia. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I knew these kids pretty well. I'm like, how do you know somebody in Australia? Oh, I don't. I'm like, well, how did you get it? And they're like, well, one of my friends shared it with me. And I said, well, does your friend know that person in Australia? And he goes, no. And I'm like, well, how did he get it? Oh, he got it from one of his friends, and so on and so on. And at that moment in time, the light bulb went off in my head that the way that and the speed at which we were going to be able to communicate in the future was going to be changed forever. And we were now going to be on a much more open platform, able to connect with just about anybody in the world and do it in real time. And it was just one of these things that I just dove in and started getting involved with social media. And I got involved with Social Media Club in Chicago. I was on the board for them. I handled all the communications. And then I quickly learned that I was doing more than communications. I was really doing something greater, because it encompassed customer service. It encompassed, event planning. It encompassed, getting out and meeting people at the events and coordinating volunteers and growing our attendee base. And all of a sudden I heard this phrase, community manager. And I started doing some research online, and I couldn't find too much about it. And, there was a gaming community group that was it had been around for 10 years at the time, I think. There was another site called The Community Manager, which is now a CMX hub, which is more about, at that time, it was more about the startup community managers. And then there was the Community Roundtable, which was much more at the time, very enterprise driven. And I'm like, I'm none of those things, right? I don't fit in any of these buckets. And if I'm looking for this information, I bet other people are. And so I started a site called My Community Manager, and I started having Google Hangouts when Google Plus came about. Before they were even on air, I was doing Hangouts, and we had our Google Plus circle. So that's the way I got people into the circle. If you wanted to be on the Hangout, you had to come in the circle so we could invite you to join the Hangout. Right. And we started doing that. And as a result, what ended up happening is I started asking other community managers to come in, and more people got aware of this. And I got connected with people that were, in New York at News Corp. I got, connected with the guy who was a community director at Huffington Post. I was community managers with, Yammer. I was, it was just like people all over the world were coming into these Hangouts. And then one day I just kind of dedicated my life to this live stream video and community management thing. And I posted on Facebook, and there's an article that I have on a website that's called How I Got My Job at Huffington Post, from a Facebook post. But I posted on Facebook, and it's a Venn diagram, and I'm sure both of you have probably seen this before. It's three circles, and one is what you're good at, one is what you're passionate about, and the other is what pays well. And in the center, where they all overlap, it had hashtag win. And it was three yellow, so in the center it was red, and I posted that simply saying, I'm getting closer to red every day. And I had a ton of people comment on that, but one of them was the guy that I connected with through the Hangouts on My Community Manager, who was the director of community at Huffington Post. And he said, come work at Huffington Post, we'll help get you there.
Wow.
And most people would be like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, I know how employee referrals work. He's just throwing that out there because if I get a job there, he's going to get money. And so I said, if you're serious, pick up the phone and call me. You know how to get in touch with me. And the next day my phone rang, and he called me, and he told me about these different jobs that they had in community management at Huffington Post. And one of them was for the community manager. At the time, the working name was HuffPost Streaming Network, which ended up being HuffPost Live. And he told me all these jobs, and I'm like, wait a minute. You're looking for a community manager for a live streaming network that you're launching. And he goes, yes. And I'm like, that was written for me. And I got on my interview. Most of the people, they'd fly out to New York for an interview. My interview was done over video because they wanted to understand if I knew how to use video. And I met with two of the three executives. They were telling me some of their thoughts of how this was all going to work. And I just flat out looked at them and I said, I think you got it all wrong. And ultimately, I was right. And it wasn't about being right or wrong, but it was me challenging what they were thinking because they didn't spend their time online. They didn't spend their time in communities to understand the nature of what it took to get somebody from typing something to getting their face on video. And I know that might sound even like still so true today, but go back 6-7 years, and that was even more so. I mean, people didn't even have the technology to get on video back then.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting offered the job. I remember I was sitting at our pool in suburban Chicago. It was the middle of summer. And I got a call from the HR department asking me those qualifying questions that we get here in the States. You know, are you a legal resident? You know, are you permitted to work in the U.S.? Are you free to start on this date? And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, why are you asking me? And they're like, oh, you're getting offered a position. And I'm like, oh. And so I told my wife we were moving to New York, and she wasn't too happy about that fact, but we got over that. And that's how I actually got my job at Huffington Post, was because of the community that I had built, the kind of the thought leadership that I had created in community management through using live stream video was what ended up getting me my job at Huffington Post.
Right. So great speed work. You staked out some ground, learned some skills, and leveraged that. That's awesome.
Yep. And it wasn't anything that I had at the time. Like I believed this phrase, fake it until you make it, right? I don't necessarily believe that anymore, because what I realized when I went back and looked in the rearview mirror was everything that I had done in my life, from estimating to inside sales, to customer service, to sales management, to project management, to engineering, to real estate, communications, all those things were what made me qualified to be a great community builder. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what I try and really help people with now, is understand you have those skills, right? Even if you're in college now, you have those skills. We just need to transfer them from the way that you currently think about them to the way an employer is going to think about them. Or you can use them in your own business. I mean, either way, it's one of those two things.
And that leads right into what Nathaniel does for people.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Very cool. Yeah, you picked up a copy of my book before Christmas, and I wanted to thank you for that. Both of you bought my book. Mm-hmm. I'm really happy. I was really happy about that. So thank you.
It's called Cheers to You.
Cheers to you guys. It's, a lot of time and effort went into that book, mm-hmm. And it's amazing how much time and effort actually goes into even a short book. It's incredible how hard it is. And then it's like, oh, I'm a bit nervous now. I don't know if I should put this out there. And then there's like a delay, and that delay lasted me about 6 months. I should have put that book out 6 months ago. But actually, at that point, I would have put it into Amazon and actually done it that way. But I thought, you know what? Jeff Bezos, he's got $98 billion. Do I really want to give him more money? I don't know. And I'm still not sure on that. I might release another copy, a different copy, to go into Amazon. But I don't know, to be honest. I'm a bit worried about critics.
Interesting. I wanted to mention, I got a note from Stefan here. The in and out we've been having on the show is not clumsiness. It's actually, we have hackers. So this is an underground show now. They don't want you to hear what we have to share.
Yeah, we've had a few problems. I've had a few problems that we all have the past few months, and they just need to go bother someone else. It's like,
it's comical.
It's dull now, really. You
know what? You're making an impact when somebody actually is paying attention enough to want to bring you down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my whole thing is don't waste your energy on who's bringing you down. Just keep pressing forward.
Right.
Exactly. We have the same, all three of us have the same mentality completely about all these things. It's very funny, actually. Very funny, you know.
So I would like to hear from both of you. Tim first. What do you think that people watching, someone watching, could do today to begin to move forward on developing their personal authority and using that out in the marketplace to achieve what they want?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is understanding what that is, right? Like, you need to understand what you want people to know about you first, and don't make it too broad. Otherwise, nobody's going to focus on you. And so, you know, my thing was I was social media, right? And until I focused on community management, I was all over the board. I would want, you know, I would be putting messages out about this. I would be putting messages out about that. When I started focusing on community management, that's when people started paying attention to me. And so until you understand what it is that you want to be known for, it's going to be very difficult for other people to relate to you.
Yeah. I agree a lot with that, completely with that, actually. I think I thought I was in social media for ages. And then I realized that I was competing with, you know, university graduates and mothers who were able to sit at home and do it while their kids were sleeping, and also with big agencies. And then I was like, well, what's the point in trying to compete when actually I need to learn something new? So I went away and learned about the personal branding from someone who had used the same process for massive corporate brands. So what I would say is, first of all, like you were saying, know your superpower, right? And that's pretty much what you're saying, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So know your superpower. And then if you don't have credibility and authority within that particular field, go and find someone that has, and actually just say, hey, you know, can you help me? I really want to learn and how to provide for myself and my family, and I need help. Please help me. And you'd be surprised, like, how many people, when you say please help me, like, they will help you, because, you know, it is human nature, right? Like, that's what it is. Like, we're here to help each other, and then use their credibility and authority and say, oh, I'm working with so-and-so, and share your journey. Like, share your journey. What did you learn this week? How did it affect you? And how did you help other people? And just write about it. And then one day you realize you can be questioned for half an hour in front of 50 people. And then you're like, wow, like, I didn't really know what the hell I was doing until I could stand up in front of these 50 intellectuals who quizzed the daylights out of me. And I answered every question perfectly. And you're like, yes.
Confirmation. So I love it. I'm thinking of your example, Tim, of creating the Google Circle, the group, is also something people could do, because you don't have to necessarily have all the expertise. And it's okay to struggle. It's okay to be working on this stuff. I don't want people to beat themselves up. Oh, I don't know it yet. Exactly. It can take a while, and that's okay. You know, enjoy the journey, right? There's a guy who I interviewed a few years back who went on to become the vice president of business development for a big space industry company. And I was chit-chatting with him about how he got there and what he did. And one of the stories that he told me was he created a business breakfast group and invited the people that he wanted in there. And after a while, people started deferring to him because he ran the group. That's it. He was like an underling at the time, right? As an employee, he was not a vice president or a manager or anything like that at the organization he was working at. But that enabled him to grow in personal authority because people associated him with the other people that he had deliberately invited into this group. And that's a really cool way of doing it.
Yeah, that's when I was sharing about how I created the My Community Manager, circle and group. It was really building a community. I didn't have any formal experience as a community builder. I had lots of skills that enabled me to become a community builder, but I didn't have any of those. I was just bringing together other people that were in that space.
Right.
But it's exactly what you said, is instead of people looking at me like, oh, you're just somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, they started looking at me as the most authoritative figure in that space because I was the one organizing everybody.
Right. Yeah. Make a decision and do it.
Yeah.
They want to get to the other people, don't they? I mean, that's what's happened to me. Like I've contacted so many people to do podcast shows. Like literally people are like, wow, yeah, sure, I'd love to do a podcast with you. And I'm like, wow, that was easy. Like it just becomes so easy. Like, and we're launching a new podcast soon as well, which I'd love to have you on that, Tim. We're probably going to use the Facebook Live and just take the audio and then put that into podcast. So we might even do that today with today's broadcast, but we need to check that out, right? So because we've got a new site, like I was saying to you, this instant impact site is launching soon. We're just defining what on earth it is, and it might start over here as being this, but actually it's going to be pretty broad, I think, from what I can gather.
Cool.
No, and I think the other important thing, because I know, you brought up several times, Nat, about reaching out to other people, right? And for help. And I think that's so powerful. But I think the important thing to remember is, two things. One is if you start when you're beginning reaching out to people like, Mark Cuban or Elon Musk, you're probably not going to be successful, right? So start reasonable. Start with people that are knowledgeable in that space, but might not be the most well-known people. You don't need to know the most well-known people. You need to know the most knowledgeable people. And the second thing is, if you're reaching out and you get any no, I mean, this goes back to like basic training, right, of sales. But, if you get no's, don't try and convince, unlike a sale, you don't need to try and convince that person that they should help you. There's millions of other people that can help you. Don't waste your time and your energy, especially when you're starting out, trying to convince that one person to try and help you. There's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other people that are able to help you. You just need to keep asking.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're probably like, yeah, we know that. But if anybody's watching, information interviews, easiest thing in the world. Podcast interviews, to go out and ask, would you allow me to interview you? You're going to run into two types of people who want to show off how awesome they are and what they know, and it's an ego thing, or two, people who just want to help. I remember I was coaching a guy who wanted to get into the Facebook ads agency business, and this was years back now, right? And because of the time zone he was in Florida, he would get off his regular government day job. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to go back in time here. You need to call like 2 hours ago back in like Colorado or something, right? And he got the marketing manager. We targeted roofing companies. He got the marketing manager of this medium-sized roofing company, good 50 people, working there, on the phone. And just out of the goodness of her heart, she started telling him all about the roofing industry in Colorado. 20 minutes of this stuff, and I could have released that as a product by itself there. This is either the recording or written it down, right? Of like pain points and symptoms and cyclical events that happen in that industry and what you could do to even them out and all that. I mean, just again, by reaching out and talking to people. Didn't even ask for it. He did not get on the phone and say, would you tell me about the roofing industry in Colorado? He just said, I'd like to talk to you about this. And she just opened up and started sharing this stuff with him. So people are out there and they want to help you. It's not a selfish world that we live in, and choose to see it that way. It's a friendly world.
It's all how we want to see it.
Yeah. Agreed. Can't thank you enough, Tim, for dropping by. It's brilliant.
Thanks for having me.
Love to have you as a guest again. We're doing. Yes. I think this is probably going to transform from the personal branding into a more. I don't know quite where it's going actually, but in the next, we're doing another. I think 5 or 6 of the personal branding ones. Mm-hmm. And if you'd like to hop into to another one of those, that would be great if you have time. If not, we can do one in the future.
I was going to say, you just let me know. If I'm available, I'm in with you guys anytime.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, it was great meeting you, Tim.
Yeah, you too, Jason. Cheers.
Isn't he a nice guy? He's so cool, right?